All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Resident Skeptics. I've got Jordan here with me, and we are ready to get on to this.
We are. I mean, who else would be here? Who else would be here besides me?
It's true. There's not very many other people. They're like, oh, I want to research the news and talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's pretty crazy, and there has been a lot of news this week.
We said that last week, and I think there's probably more news than this week. Luckily, we have more time to record than last time.
So I feel a subtle jab there. The reason why I say that is because last time I was super rushed. I had a work appointment that was an hour away from where we're recording.
Yeah,
so I had to leave.
I thought it was an hour and a half, actually.
No, it was an hour. So
you made it in an hour. Okay.
Yeah, so we're kind of. It was just basically like all the way down 85.
That's a good drive.
Yep, that'll do it.
But you made it on time, and we got a good segment in. Just about. It was actually a little bit longer than the last one, I think.
It was a little bit longer, maybe by like 2 minutes.
Couple minutes.
Yeah,
two to 4 minutes.
Nothing to write home about, but there is a lot written here today.
That's because I kept pulling on strings, and it just kept going and going, and there's not much I can do about that.
Yeah. You're like that meme. You know that meme where that guy, where he's like got all the strings going to different places, and he's like pointing, like, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Like any detective show where they have all the little strings drawn up all over the wall.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly that. That's how I imagined you today.
Kind of wish I had one.
Week,
that would actually be fun to make, except mine wouldn't be nearly as expansive.
It'd just literally be one string. It'd just be one string going around the room.
Going through like multiple topics. There's no like center point where they're all leading back to some grand conspiracy theory.
It's just a string that goes on for eternity. An entire ball of yarn. But we digress.
That would be amazing. But I think you were going to start off this segment for us.
Oh, I was.
You were.
I was. I misunderstood. I thought you were. But I will go ahead and start.
I did the introduction. I'm talking about the segments, which I can start it off with a question here.
Well, I mean, you can go ahead and try. Go ahead. What question do you have for me?
Okay. Can men get pregnant?
I
need to know for myself because I need to prepare the lower ends of my body if that's going to happen.
Well, I mean, you've been married now for 6 months, so you have to start having kids, and you want to know if you can have them.
That's right. I don't want to end up accidentally having a kid.
That'd be bad.
Especially if I'm the one that's pregnant.
Yeah, that's going to be awkward in so many different ways.
No, it's going to be painful.
Yes, Connor, it would be painful, but we're not going to discuss that because this is a PG rated podcast. It's not G rated because we talk about.
It is definitely not G rated. I would say we've entered into the PG-13 realm.
PG, yeah, I think once we get done with this segment, we will definitely have entered into PG-13 land, but not in like a.
I don't think there's really a way to talk about everything on the news and things that are going on in the country and culture, and it be anything less gruesome than PG-13.
Yeah, no, it's as we keep diving in, it's gonna keep getting a little bit more weird, and that's a weird question, Connor, and I'm going to talk about my lived experience and my lived observations, and I have seen, out of all the people I've seen get pregnant, 10 out of 10 of them have been women.
No.
What?
That's not possible.
How is it not? Okay.
Because men can get pregnant.
Well, I have heard from a trusted source-ish when you have when you have a medical problem and you go on to Google and then suddenly you think you have cancer because you went to WebMD.
Yeah, I love WebMD. It's really accurate. It's perfect.
Yes.
Gets my symptoms right every time.
Yes.
I've died at least 3 dozen times already.
You've had 3 different viruses plus 4 different cancers at different
New
stages
ones
at the same time. Yeah.
Unknown. Nobody knows what they are.
Well, I feel like Healthline is kind of in the same vein as WebMD. And they're not... I'm going to say after this article, they have lost a lot of credibility. In case you haven't seen it going around, Healthline has a new article out entitled, "Can Men Get Pregnant?" Now, it's in 3 sections.
Should be a short article. Should there just be no?
It really should be. But you know what? I want to indulge this. I just want to see what they have to say.
All right, we can
Right?
indulge it.
Okay, because there's 3 different sections, and 2 of them. Well, the first one is if you have a uterus and ovaries. That's the first section, and then if you don't have a uterus. So let's. Ooh, excuse me. I just ate, guys. I'm sorry.
We can take care of that later.
Okay.
Okay, so ovaries, no ovaries.
Yep.
So women and men.
All right. So women and men. So I'm going to read just the first part. We're not going to read through all of this because that is too much. But the question is it possible? Yes. This is according to Healthline. I'm quoting them directly. Yes, it's possible for men to become pregnant and give birth to children of their own. In fact, it's probably a lot more common than you might think. Good news for you, Connor.
No.
In order to explain, we'll need to break down some common misconceptions about how we understand the term man. Oh dear. Not all people who were assigned male at birth, and the abbreviation they have for this is AMAB. So, assigned male at birth, identify as men. Those who do are cisgender men. Conversely, some people who were assigned female at birth, which is abbreviated AFAB, identify as men. These folks may be transgender men or transmasculine people. Okay, so I think, Connor, you were correct in the beginning to just say no.
No.
If you are not a woman, you cannot get pregnant. This is absolutely insane. Even for Healthline, who I don't really know Healthline super well, but this is basic biology. Basic biology. Like there's no need to go into. And here's what really kicks. Here's the real kicker I get. Okay, I'm gonna go to the if you don't have a uterus section. Right? If you don't have a uterus section. So here they have to say here. Okay, to our knowledge, there has not yet been a case of pregnancy in an AMAB individual. However, advances in reproductive technology could make this a possibility in the near future for folks who have had hysterectomies and those who are not born with ovaries or uterus. Basically, men. Men cannot have babies. That is basically what it says. And here's what I'm thinking, right? And this is just me maybe being crazy, maybe thinking out loud. If you have to go through all of this work, like to scientifically and artificially try to get a man pregnant, is it possible that it was never meant to be? Is it possible that that wasn't part of the design?
I'm not even sure where to go with it at this point.
It's
there's only so much joking I can do before this just gets sad, and I mean this genuinely because this is an entire deconstruction of civilization as it has existed forever.
right.
And they continually keep trying to chip away at it, deconstruct it. And what's odd about it is that in all of it, they're just trying to, I would say at their best, that people, well, the progressives are trying to give people something to identify with. In the midst of it, they have muddied the waters so much. What do you identify with now? Now they're taking away the fact that women are the child bearers.
Mm-hmm.
Because I imagine in the article they're going to talk about the fact that, if you're a trans man, you can still give birth, assuming you didn't go have corrective surgery that negates all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have this where they're talking about scientifically they could go and get a man pregnant, which I don't doubt. That being said, I don't know any guy that wants to or would. Your body, they're not constructed for that.
Right.
The physiology doesn't exist. It's not there. And I think a really easy to classify things is male and female, men and women.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it goes into kind of a deeper issue of a theory that has gone around the communications realm that's called social constructionism.
Mm-hmm.
And social constructionism basically is saying that everything is created by society. Now, the issue with this, that's saying that everything has been created by society, like we've created the idea of a nuclear family, which that's partially true. But basically, the issue with social constructionism and what's happening here is that reality goes against the idea that this was socially constructed. This was constructed from the beginning, that a woman would bear children and that a man would be the leader and raise his family. And we have not only destroyed the concept of man and woman through social constructionism, but through that, you're asking, like, why would a man ever want to get pregnant? I think most of them probably don't. I think most of them don't. But we have destroyed the nuclear family so much that this has become an idea that we think could be completely possible. That you could have a woman and then a woman who identifies as a man trying to have a child together, or having two men and who knows, what how they lean in regards to whether they claim to be transgender or not. We have so deconstructed society that terms are completely meaningless. For women, not all women are going to end up getting pregnant, but women are the only ones who can end up getting pregnant. And I think that any woman who reads this article should be deeply offended that they would allow the term to be so muddled up that we can't even say women get pregnant. Now it's pregnant people. If you've been
I
seeing
thought it was
that,
like birth givers or something like that now.
it's birthing person.
Birthing persons.
Yes.
That's right. Birthing persons.
Yeah, it's birthing person, and it's now pregnant people too, or people who get pregnant. So they can't even say woman anymore because we have so deeply muddled the term. This is a broken society. The fact that there is even this article, let me see here. Yeah, this article is it's about probably about a couple of pages, maybe. So it can't, again, the article didn't get super long and detailed because there is only so much you can say.
I'm sure it didn't get very scientific either because this goes against all of biology.
It does. And even so, they cited some experts in this, and I'm going to see who the author is. The author is Casey Clements, a queer non-binary writer in Brooklyn, New York. I'm reading directly from their site. Their work deals with queer and trans identity, sex and sexuality, health and wellness from a body positivity standpoint, and much more. You can keep up with them by visiting their website or find them on Twitter and Instagram, blah, 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 blah. They do cite some experts. Here's the thing, because they cite a doctor named Dr. Richard Paulson, the former president of the American Society for Reproductive Medicine. And so what he does is he suggests that uterine transplants for trans women and AMAB folks are more or less possible now. So even hear that, uterine transplants. That basically says in itself that it's not possible without deep intervention.
Yeah, you've got to go get a body part that's either been lab grown or from somebody else that's donated it, and you're going to have to basically have a C-section to put it in you, grow the baby, and then have it come back out. Because as a male, your dick is too small for a baby to come out of it. Your hips are not going to move. You will break.
Yeah.
I'm terrified of the surgical outcomes and harm that people are going to go through if people actually start going through with this.
Yeah, and I gotta be honest, I don't think they're gonna be able to. It's all just nonsense to me. Like it's all very nonsensical. It doesn't make sense. And when I say the words women should be deeply offended, I don't think people should get offended by everything. But I think that if you care about your womanhood, this is something worth saying, yeah, this is really kind of offensive. Only women can get pregnant. And that shouldn't be a controversial phrase. I shouldn't have to fear ridicule for saying that. It's very basic biology. Every person that I've seen be pregnant is a woman. That's my lived experience, my lived observation, as the left likes to say. But it's just insane. And this is what happens. It's so weird. Because we had third wave feminism that wanted to basically be better than men and showed that they could do just as good of a job. And then there's also the transgender movement, which kind of almost removes the uniqueness of men and women by saying that you can become a woman if you want to, or become
Mhm.
a man if you want to. And so these ideologies are clashing with each other so deeply, where I do think there's going to come a point where the left starts to eat itself, because it's almost like these two things can't exist without tension from these two parties, or at least there should be tension because these are contradictory ideologies.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I've been wondering, where have the feminists been? The third, the fourth wave feminists, particularly. Back when some of this stuff became, I remember this becoming mostly mainstream when Bruce Jenner made his partial transition. I can't remember what his female name is at this point.
Caitlyn.
Caitlyn Jenner,
Yeah.
that's right. When he made that switch to Caitlyn Jenner, and then he took Woman of the Year award.
Yeah.
Guess what? Men are better at everything than women, including being women.
Oh, that's mean. That's mean. I'm actually gonna push back a little bit on that. Like, I know you're kind of half joking.
Oh, I'm
right?
definitely joking. It's for the sake of the joke that he
Right.
that he beat all the other women, all the other real women out there for the year,
Right.
which is a phenomenal feat considering he's a man.
He is a biological man. He's a man. And we shouldn't even be saying biological man. We should just be saying man, with the understanding that you cannot change
Yep.
what it should be to be a man.
And this is not to be disparaging to people that do struggle with where they fall on the lines, and I feel bad for them, because it feels like every year there's another dozen different things that might be getting added, even some that are just make up what you want to be. And I mean, there's too many different directions I could go with this, but the title of woman in motherhood, despite them having the lack of rights over the centuries, they are still the ones who are in charge of essentially deciding who gets to continue their lineage onto the future.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
Men would either get rejected or accepted, at least the decent ones. We obviously know that there's vile ones out there who would force themselves. But as far as a normal society and community, women get to accept or deny essentially men's request or their ability to propagate into the future with their lineage, with their bloodline. And so you get to stand there and you get to meet a guy and you're like, yeah, no, you're not good enough. You're not worth it.
What? I've never done
Now,
that before.
and it says something to the guys,
Never
but like the
done
guy's got to
that.
keep trying, right?
Right,
They can't just stop. But that is not something that men can obtain. They are not as crucial. You have a planet that's majority men and one woman, you're doomed. You're done. Just
yeah, that's probably true.
bide your time. If you've got one or you got a couple of men, but you have a good amount of women, they can repopulate the earth because they are the key.
They are. It's I don't. This is the thing I don't understand about modern feminism. To make a kid inside of you is pretty dang incredible. Now, for women going through pregnancy, lots of nauseous days, morning sickness, trouble sleeping. Sure, it comes with the territory. Just as men have to toil for the rest of their lives. But to create a human being in you is something that is truly fantastic and so unique. From woman comes man.
Mm-hmm.
And it's absolutely incredible. And so when women say, yeah, you know what, and they don't say it quite like this, but this is what I grab when they say it. They're like, yeah, you know what's more important? Me making these spreadsheets for the rest of my life. Me running this publishing company for the rest of my life, even though someone else could probably take that job. Someone else could probably take that job and do fine. Someone else can make those spreadsheets. Someone else can build that email. No one can raise your kids the way you can.
Mm-hmm.
That is a tremendous responsibility. And if women want to complain about how horrible society has turned out, or they want to complain about youngsters these days, look at what's happened. Who's raising your kids? Is it you, or is it the school system?
School system, daycares,
Yep.
babysitters.
And maybe your house isn't as big. Maybe you drive a lower model car. Now, I do want to say, in all fairness and sensitivity to women who are in hard situations, who are single moms, or you do have a husband or a partner, and you guys are trying to make ends meet, and you have to work. I totally understand that, and I get it, But for a lot of people who have the option, because I've seen these people, I grew up in about middle class, so I know how they live. I know that they could, if they wanted to, scale down and actually be with their children. So it kind of feels like sometimes with modern feminism is like you want to have your cake and eat it too. Like that's what it feels like sometimes.
It's a little bit, and I mean they've had a few clashes with this movement because it really does just deconstruct the entire image of womanhood that they are trying to build up. Also, women's rights. If we start doing away with biological gender and all the other things that they've thrown into it, I don't know how you can accomplish something like that, such as women's rights, if we're all just basically the same thing with different preferences.
Right, which is totally not true. Men and women are so different. Like even the way that you and I talk on this podcast is vastly different. You also have a beard and I don't. This is a notable fact about the two of us. I do get a mustache every once in a while, and yes, I do trim it, but it comes with the territory. It comes with having dark hair. It is what it is.
Yep.
Got to normalize having the facial hair. I just like to take it off. But that was a tangent. The way that we think is just going to be different. Our skill sets are different.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always admired that you're much more of a handyman. Like you can really do those stuff, and you're really, really good at it. I suck at it. I freaking suck at it. But I'm better at other things. I do a lot of communications work. I'm more artistic. Not that a man can't be artistic or a woman couldn't be handy.
And I think that's one of the important things to note is that just because you have something that is largely a male or female, we'll say skill or interest, doesn't mean that you are that thing. Because there is a large scope of people, and people fall all over the place on it.
Yeah.
There's aggressive men, there's aggressive women. You look at the most aggressive, they're probably all going to be men. That doesn't mean that you can't have aggressive women.
Oh yeah, I've met them. And they're still very much women. Like they're still very much women.
It doesn't change. That's something that has bothered me and my wife Preston quite a bit, is anytime we're watching some of these newer shows or movies, it seems that if you were to get a strong female lead who's just an absolute powerhouse, because we're big on superheroes and anime, you get them and they can't be straight. It seems to be the common thread.
Yeah.
Is that every time they end up, in the very least, they're bisexual or they're lesbian, because you can't be a gorgeous female strong lead who kicks butt and is just an incredible character in a story and be straight. It's really been odd for me that seems to be what they go for.
Well, that's why I liked the not the newest Wonder Woman, the first one that came out with Gal Gadot.
Gal Gadot, yep.
Yeah, where I just think she is such like a beautiful woman. And the way that they portrayed her was, I felt like just as a strong woman. Like here's the issue with these things when you talk about them like being bisexual, lesbian. It's like they're trying to be a man. But when you have a genuinely strong woman who's not trying to be a man, the character ends up just really good, like really, really brilliant. And that's why I liked Wonder Woman so much, is that she was still very much feminine. And she still very much honed in those things and used them to her advantage, opposed to trying to be a man and be something that she's not. And so when you see these shows that have those characters, it just seems so fake and unrealistic. And you're like, this doesn't make any sense. But when we see a woman truly hone in her femininity to fight her enemies, I think that's really strong, really powerful. and I think it's perfectly fine if they, if they're paired with a man. I think that's great. I mean, however the storyline goes, I don't know. I'm just thinking about.
Yeah, I think, and if we jump over to the Avengers movie, at least their cinematic universe, Black Widow and Pepper Potts were really good examples of that. And then you brought in Wanda as well, and she did a fantastic job. And then they brought in Captain Marvel, and they kind of portrayed her as this like emotionless brick. It felt really unnatural what they were going for, as they really went for her to be very manlike. I would say she was on the butcher side of things, and
she did get that haircut at the end.
She did get the haircut.
It was like it's called a manager haircut, I think is what it is. Like just that's how a friend described it to me one time.
Manager haircut. Yeah, that's fair. And then they had that whole like female charge in the last movie, and I was just like, it was a little much. I think it felt really forced. Like, we are going to have this moment, and they put it in there.
Yeah, well, obviously they did it for that reason. Like, there was no other reason. And I don't really think Black Widow. I feel like Black Widow got better with time. But in the beginning, I was like, when she was in the first Avengers and they all are like in a circle in New York City with all the aliens flying everywhere, and everyone's there, and then Black Widow has a pistol, and you're just like, what's happening? I don't understand. How is she surviving? But I think she actually got better.
And then Hawkeye standing over there with a bow and arrow. So.
Well, that was also very silly too. That was also very silly. But I think I like Wanda better.
Wanda is probably my favorite female character in the cinematic universe for Marvel. I think her powers are intriguing. Her story's traumatic and then redemptive. She has a really great character arc.
She does. She really does.
And also, out of the Olsen daughters, she's definitely the prettiest.
Yeah, I think she's really pretty. Yeah, she's really pretty. But yeah, we're the two movements are going against each other, and this is just another example of craziness in a society that is turning itself upside down.
It's ripping the foundation out from its feet, and this is just one of the aspects, and we'll continue to hit on different aspects of where it just seems to be destroying itself or eating itself, or where it's just on a collision course, and it's going to happen sooner or later. You can't have all these women's rights feminists and activists also supporting women's suppression as far as Islam is concerned, yet they do.
Which is insane.
It's a really weird marriage of two different things that really don't have anything. And they should be mortal enemies, quite honestly.
What was it, like the enemy of my enemy?
Enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah, that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, for now. I mean, they've had a few clashes in the past that were a little bit minor, but nothing substantial.
Yeah.
Have you kept at all in touch with what's happening in the combat sport arena for women? With the trans women that have showed up?
Yeah, I've kept like a small eye on it. I mean, it all just feels like the same story at this point of a man, this is what's so sick. Is that it's a guy's like, oh, I'm transgender now, and then he beats the crap out of these women.
Cracked her skull, I believe, actually.
Yeah, and it's brutal, and it's almost, that's like a mental illness in itself, to be a man and beating up another woman.
Yeah.
And even if I were like, say I really did think, like if I were a man, I really thought that I was a woman, they're not without common sense of saying, I'm still stronger than this woman. Would this be right of me to beat them up? Like, that's a decent question. But I think, at least in this case with the one, I don't remember the name of the guy who went against the girl in the MMA fight.
I want to say it was Fallon Fox. I might be wrong about that. There was one that was more recent.
I remember that he had pink hair.
Yes, Fallon Fox.
Yeah, I think that's the one I'm thinking of.
Who did he injure and what was it? It was a knockout at 2 minutes and 17 seconds of the first round of their match, and Brent's eye injury resulted in damaged orbital bone that required 7 staples. So in the first round, knocked her out, fractured her orbital, I guess it's her orbital socket technically. There's not even much of a competition there. That's why we've always separated them, because physiologically there's a lot of advantages that men have. Being flexible is not one of them.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be particularly special to be a guy and be flexible and really work at it. Girls just seem to be naturally flexible. I think that's why they're more interesting to watch when it comes to gymnastics, when it comes to ice skating, anything that requires some grace to it. Mm-hmm. Women 100% have the edge, and then men just become like these, I don't know, like brute force bodies of muscle.
It's almost like they were meant to be protectors. They're meant to be leaders, and this will
almost
like
also... that's where like biology, or even have you evolution, has stuck them.
Yeah, and it's almost like, and all the feminists are gonna hate me. It's almost like women are typically weaker than men.
Mm-hmm.
And again, women don't like this either. I don't know if this is just me being old-fashioned. I don't think this is that old-fashioned.
I'll let you know if it's old-fashioned or not.
Okay. You'll be honest with me. I know that. Where I feel like women, they don't like this, but I think there is something so beautiful about being a strong woman, but still understanding that you have delicacy. I think there's something really charming when a man has gentleness yet strength with a woman.
Mm-hmm.
That's somewhat lost in our society. Something I think is very the word's not romantic. That's part of it, but it almost seems right, if that makes sense. Like there's kind of a piece about when I see something on screen. Like, I'm not a chick flick watcher. Okay, I don't watch chick flicks.
Nope.
I watch a lot of the action movies. But
I have one that I'll watch, and that's about it.
Yeah. There's like 1 or 2 chick flicks. So they're old ones. They're older ones. But I do love like a secondary plot with a man and a woman. I don't like it being the main plot. That's just too much work. But like even like the superhero movies with like, Pepper Potts and Tony Stark, that though Tony Stark is not much of a gentleman.
He turns into one.
He does turn into one.
I really despised him in the first, definitely in the first movie, and I really didn't like him in the second movie, but his character arc to who he becomes, I was like, that's somebody that I could definitely respect.
Right. And I think that's the whole point, is that the character progressed. But we've lost this idea that men are supposed to protect women.
Yeah, and it's not that women can't protect themselves. That's not what we're saying. It's that is a primary role that does fall to men, because biologically, evolutionary, that is what they do best.
Yeah. And when we see, if a man assaults anyone, or especially assaults a woman, or, God forbid, sexual assault or rape, we understand that we say, hey, that's wrong, because that's a perversion of what men were supposed to be. Mm-hmm. That men are supposed to be protectors, not assaulters. They're supposed to have a deep, intimate relationship with a woman, not force it on them in such just a brutal way. We understand those things. And so if we can understand the perversion of what men are, we should understand what they should be the right way around, the way they're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, I think this is a whole different conversation that maybe we need to have later about has our society actually made men, or have they made them more feminine?
They're definitely trying to equalize and put everybody on the same line. And you know what the funny part is? We stopped being first world, and we stopped having all this technology stuff on our hands. The supply chains break down, and the food's not coming, and everybody's kind of out on their own, and the electric grid goes down. All of that goes away. You're not going to have the time to think about what you want to be or what you might feel like. You're going to fall into a role that best suits you. And in large, those roles will be men protecting and women caring. And it just fundamentally, you devolve a first world society. The only reason that we're having these conversations is because we have the time and the advancements in technology and the privilege to sit around and try to mess around with biology, because guess what? Men are not getting pregnant in a natural arena. It's not going to happen. You have to have some sort of third party come in, have a surgery. Same with women, because I believe technically a woman can get pregnant by another woman if you go and get the DNA from bone marrow and have that whole surgery.
You might have to explain that, because I feel like what they do is if it's two women, then they'll put the egg of the other woman in, and then the sperm, they'll put that into the other woman, if that makes sense.
So it's not necessarily getting sperm, because if you get sperm, that's going to come from men, but you can get DNA. This is a long time since I've read up on this, but essentially you might be able to get DNA from bone marrow, which is already a really painful extraction. And then they can, I don't know if they have to grow those DNA samples into some sort of a cell, but essentially then they have to go artificially implant it in that woman's partner. The thing is none of that happens without scientific third-party intervention. So to be claiming that this is a natural state is entirely false.
And I don't know if the article is claiming that it's natural state.
No, I mean, they're saying they are saying it's possible, and at that point, I would say we could probably agree with them and say, yeah, it's possible. It's not natural, though. It's not normal. It's abnormal, and it's outside of the forces of nature.
Right, and even if they say that a man can get pregnant, and when they say a man get pregnant, they mean a woman who is saying that she's a man, that would still be a woman getting pregnant. Them taking more testosterone and growing facial hair and whatever other surgeries that they have to remove their breasts, that doesn't make them less of a woman. They're still a woman. So this article is kind of defeated either way. But it's disheartening, and I can't even believe we spent this much time on it, because you were absolutely right. It's like, no. The answer is a solid no. If anyone asks you if a man can get pregnant, they absolutely cannot. But like we've talked about, we have lost the definitions of man and woman. We basically said there's no difference. And speaking of no difference, and this one shocked me a little bit, and this one does deserve a little bit more time. If you haven't been watching the news, this one is not as prevalent, but basically a House panel has backing a requirement for women to register for the draft. This is according to Politico, and I quote, "The House Armed Services Committee on Wednesday voted to require women to register for the military draft, making the change one step closer to becoming law after senators endorsed the move this summer." So that is something that is happening. And then I quote again, "The move caps off a contentious debate and conservative opposition to the National Defense Authorization Act, which authorizes defense spending and lays out military policy." Now, here's what's really a bit more shocking about this, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on it, that this isn't just backed by Democrats. This was backed by Republicans.
So it's nonpartisan.
Well. Yeah, and that's what really, really shocks me. Now, and here's something that Representative Michael Waltz of Florida, a former military member, said, "If it's so grave that we have to go to a draft, we need everybody," Waltz said. "We need man, woman, gay, straight, any religion, black, white, brown. We need everybody. All hands on deck." Okay, hang on. I'm just going to stop here. I don't want anyone to get offended, but you're going to get offended, so it's fine. Women are not as strong as men. What happens if we have a higher percentage of women in higher combat areas? That does create a weaker army. Am I oversimplifying, Connor?
Yeah, to some extent. Now, I would be curious, and I've heard back and forth things on this, is if they are going to be changing the requirements for women to get in. I do believe that, like, for the more elite teams, they tested the women against the men's standards, and I believe it was 100% fail rate. They didn't make it. Now, there are some other divisions that I believe, and this is definitely something we would have to look into, but from what I've listened to on other podcasts and heard from other people in the military, there are some divisions where they have lowered the standards so that women could get in.
Which, okay, I
It's
have an
not
issue with that.
safe for them to do that.
Right, like you shouldn't have to lower the standard. It should be the same. If you're a woman and you can pass that standard,
Yeah, genders are all equal.
they're equal in some ways and not in others. Women just tend to not be as strong as men. And that's just kind of the case. Like if you're out on the battlefield and you're a man, right, and I'm a woman out there with you and you get injured, who do you want carrying you off? Me or a 230-pound man? Like, who do you want out there
Not
with you?
because we're both dead, to be honest. We are sitting ducks. You're right around like what, 115 pounds?
I am, well, a lady never tells her weight, Connor.
118.
A lady never tells her weight, Connor. I'm about 130 pounds.
Okay. You've been working out and getting that muscle packed on then.
That's right. It's not a pooch. It's all.
It's not. I can testify to it's probably muscle there.
Hopefully, right? But yeah, 130 pounds with my 3-pack abs and my tiny biceps. Now, hopefully, if I went through military training, I would hope that I'd have some more muscle on me, right?
I would definitely say you would. However, if I went through military training and I'm sitting at like 200, 210 right now, if I went through military training and got up to par to go through their type of drills and the physical requirements that they have, I would at least be 250 pounds.
Yeah.
If not more, since I'm about 6 foot.
Right. And I could see myself maybe gaining 5 to 10 more pounds. Maybe. I don't know if I'd ever make it into the military. I have health issues, but say I didn't have those issues, I might make it up to, I don't know, let's say I make it up to 140, maybe. And then I have to carry you off.
Mm-hmm.
If you
Plus
get
all
injured.
your gear.
Right. Right. And I'm not, actually,
I'm not going to doubt the combat ability of women. Israel is a really good example of it. So actually, this might surprise. I'm not against women getting into the military or being drafted. I think that they should probably not be picked within the same draft as men. Like, okay, draft the men first, and then if we need to, then we're going to draft the women. I don't know if this is going to be drafting them. It sounds like they're drafting across the board. Like they would just draft everybody.
Yeah.
I'm not against that type of military service for women.
Yeah, I think I disagree pretty strongly with you here.
Mm-hmm.
I disagree quite a bit. I mean,
I think it depends on where you're going to put women in the military. If you're talking about frontline combat, probably wouldn't do it. Plenty of other places, I think that they could do well.
Yeah, I could flex and be like, if it's a non-combat position, yeah, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I stand by the principle that men are largely stronger than women. And if there are women who are stronger and want to do those combat roles, and we have had women do that, we actually lost, I don't remember her name, but one of the service women who was in Afghanistan, she was 23, she was my age, and she chose to be in Afghanistan and tragically was killed by a suicide bomber. But I think that if they want to make that choice, I don't know if I 100% agree with it, but I think that they can, if they're strong enough and they pass the same tests, that's fine.
I think passing the same tests with the same standards is a big thing.
Right.
And maybe that means that women can make it through all aspects of the military except for like the SEALs and the Rangers. Maybe that is just too intense for the majority of women, and maybe there's like a 1% of women out there, 1 or 2% that are physically capable of passing that test. Because there's men that definitely can't pass those tests. I don't think I could pass them.
Yeah.
But if they can get in with the same standards that are held for men, if women can get into it, then as far as I'm concerned, they have every right to be there.
Yeah, and if they want to, that's fine. Although, again, I don't fully agree with it for the very reasons we just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that men are the primary protectors. I believe that they should be the ones on those front lines. And for women, I mean, they're not getting it necessarily a free pass either in regards to how we have to raise our children. Raising children is incredibly difficult. Look at the landscape now. And so I think by requiring women to draft, we are kind of we're kind of adding to destroying the nuclear family system. I think that puts children in a bad situation of not having their mothers or their fathers. Also, if you're an older person and you have children, is it right that your daughter be drafted off to war? That's something you also have to think about as well. And I understand where you're coming from. You and I have actually had, I think, a conversation
we've
or
talked
two
about this before.
Yeah, and look, we reached something that we disagree about.
Oh yeah, because I'm for like mandatory 1 to 2 years of military service for everybody.
Yeah, I know.
A lot of people are like, no, I don't want that. I'm like, yeah, I think it would be good for you to get it.
I agree with your sentiment though. Like, I see where you're coming from. Well, tell me if this is where you're coming from. I feel like you're coming from a place of seeing, and I have to kind of include myself in this sometimes, but like a bunch of wimps, like a bunch of our own peers where you're like, kind of feels like you just kind of have it all, and there kind of needs to be, you need some toughening up, if that makes sense.
That would definitely be part of it for me. A lot of it because I think you can go through your life in America and not really encounter, you could get your way through most of your life and not really go through anything that's a difficult challenge. Like this military training would be mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally rough. Mm-hmm. And I think everybody needs to go through that. I think it's a good conditioning for people as they enter into life. There's a lot of basic skills it teaches. I'm really in favor of everybody learning how to handle and be around firearms.
I agree. I do agree with that.
So many people that just don't understand anything about it.
Right. Yeah, we could get into that too.
And I think it's a major advantage for a country as well, as far as protecting itself, that everybody knows how to use it. And I wanted to look and see how long female soldiers in the Israeli Defense Forces, 2 years and 4 months seems to be how long they have mandatory service.
Okay.
And
yeah, because I know we've talked about this
what's interesting is that culture, as far as I know, is probably more conservative than you are, and they're still putting women
right
in the military.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to know if their standard for women and what kind of combat or non-combat they take place in the military is.
Now it does say Israeli Defense Forces, but as we know, for Israel, the defense is pretty active.
Right, and they have to, and it makes sense for Israel because they are always, I feel like they're always having to watch their back, right?
Agreed.
I mean, to a certain extent, with how small Israel is, it almost would be kind of irresponsible to not have people trained and to not have people ready. They just live in such a different environment, and I'd have to look into that more. I got to be honest, but off the cusp, I don't know if that's the correct phrase, but just off of split second thinking here, it is a different culture, it is a different environment, and I don't know. You're making me think, Connor. I mean, I still stand by what I say, and when I say strong women, doesn't mean women don't know how to fight. I think women should know more about firearms. I think that they should know how to defend themselves. The question is, should it be like required military or required training? And that's the part where I'm not so sure about.
And then I struggle with it because I don't want the government going in and mandating these certain things. However, this is one aspect where I'm like, I would say this is a pretty positive one, unless you were able to, let's say, okay, you need to have mandatory this type of training for this long, choose your agency, and then let the free market discern where you go to get that training. That might be a potential idea of something to talk about. But for me, like you said, Israel doesn't really have the luxury of not training everybody. It would be foolish of them to do so. And I think America has that luxury, and they should do away with it. I don't see the advantage to not requiring something like that.
Yeah, I'd have to think about that. I just feel like in the perfect society, that there is no such thing.
How about optimal? Can we aim for optimal society?
I feel like in a optimal or more God-honoring society, we would see being, and I'm going back to feminism because I'm going back to, should women be in the military? I don't want them in the military because I want them raising their children. I really, really want that.
I don't know that they'll be raising I wonder what.
Like, obviously, if a woman is pregnant, I can't imagine they would.
Well, and I would imagine this service would probably come before a lot of women have kids.
Yeah, from what I know, like it's early on. Like it's not when
Why not? Can't ever spell
what
that right.
age is elderly?
What age is elderly? I'm actually curious. What do they consider that?
What age is elderly? I'd say it's about 35. That's elderly. Go.
They don't have it. Yeah, when do Israeli women go into labor as if it's different than other people? 17 and over are generally exempt from army service. Wait, what? Women who arrive in Israel 17 and over, but may serve on voluntary basis. Also, women who are not fighters are not generally called up for reserve duty if they are married or if they are beyond age 24.
Okay,
so it looks
that's
like,
fair.
It looks like they've added
okay.
quite a bit of rules to this.
I can respect that. I can respect that.
I think that would be a fun little project to do for the next segment.
Yeah.
Is to find out how has Israel treated the requirement of women in the military forces. Where do they serve? At what age? And what conditions stop them?
Yeah.
I think that would be really interesting because it is very different than what we have here, where even I was not, as a man, I'm not required to go into the military. I'm required to sign up for the draft, and I did, and I'm probably getting too old for it at this point.
Yeah, you're an old,
getting close to it.
You're an old crippled man at this point.
Gonna try to not be.
But yeah, I see your points here. And I see where you're coming from with it. I just don't think the people who are making this legislation are. I'm gonna be honest. I don't.
No,
think
their motives are very different than what
right.
mine would be. Mine would be this is what is it? Mine is more or less a contingency plan for when you don't have that luxury. You don't want an entire society that doesn't know how to handle guns, knows nothing about guns or self-defense, and can't really do anything for themselves. In fact, that becomes a liability.
Yeah.
If we were to say China were to invade, or Russia were to invade, or Canada just gets a really mean streak and goes bipolar on us and tries to attack.
I have no idea what's going on with Canada. Oh, poor Canada.
They're in their own little world.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, it's like there's not an advantage as far as it comes to looking into the future. And I think that's having that type of mandatory service is a sacrifice made in the present that for some generation or a few generations in the future could be extremely advantageous. And right now we don't have that.
Yeah.
We have a bunch of liabilities.
And not only that, I mean, we have a bunch of people who don't respect the military. They don't respect police officers. They don't respect that kind of hard work. They get to lay back and be safe, like I do. I get to be safe. I
wonder how those opinions would change if they had gone through some of that work and got to see a little bit of it.
Yeah. I mean, even like I've interviewed police officers, a couple of them for a few hours. And when the whole thing started happening in the riots of 2020, and I saw these people spewing things about police officers that I couldn't even believe. I wanted to drag them in. I wanted to drag them in to those police officers, to those chiefs. You know, one was there for 9/11. One had to learn how to climb the Brooklyn Bridge to stop jumpers, and tell them how useless they are. And just tell them that, you know, we want to defund you. I want them, if they're going to say that, I want them to say it to their face. And I think it's because people genuinely do not have an appreciation for our cops or our military. And you don't even have to be in the military to appreciate them, though I imagine if you're in the military, you appreciate them very, very much. And if you're a family member,
or have service
yes,
members, family in the service.
And I don't pretend to have the same type of understanding of that appreciation as they do, but as an American citizen, as an American, we should have a deep appreciation for these people, even if we don't understand all the sacrifices. And what you see in America today is that they don't have that appreciation. In fact, it's very arrogant and ignorant. And I'd say that I think it kind of, this word sums up how you feel and why you want this to happen. Spoiled. Mm-hmm. We have that luxury, as you've said. So I see where you're coming from, and you might have moved me. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. I still kind of feel the same way, and I could, I have another argument I can think of, but
I mean, that is one of the primary reasons we're here having this podcast is to have these discussions and maybe have our minds changed. Infamous Steven Crowder changed my mind.
We're not quite as cool as that, but I'm going to stick, by the way, you haven't changed my mind yet. I'm going to stick with my view because there's one more argument that I have, but I think we should save it for another day.
I'm good with that.
Okay. But oh my gosh, there's so much news. There's so much. And we've already spent like 25 hours on just this. There's so much to talk about.
Just about an hour.
Yeah. So let's move on to some other fun things. We love our favorite person on this podcast is Brandon. I mean Biden. I'm so sorry.
You mean Joseph?
Yes, good old Joe, or as
Josephus,
or as Trump says, Sleepy Biden. Joe. He is very, very sleepy, and it seems like as Biden declines mentally, his approval ratings have as well. In fact, they're pretty low, and you have some stats on that, right, Connor?
I have some fun ones. So, Quinnipiac poll.
So I have a question. So this poll, is it pretty well known? Like, do you know a ton about it?
Plenty of people came in and reporting on it. Fox, even CNN. Was it? I don't think it was Cooper. I'm forgetting which one of it was, but even
Anderson.
It wasn't Anderson Cooper. It was one of the other ones.
Don Lennon.
Nope,
Chris
not Don
Cuomo.
Lennon.
Okay, those are the only three I know.
Maybe I can look it up real quick here, but
that's okay.
Actually,
CNN is that's
CNN
good enough for me.
Biden poll. Yeah, even they're sounding the alarm. Let's see if I can find. All right, I don't see it right away, but even CNN anchor was talking about how the poll numbers are not reflecting or looking well on him at all. So, from Quinnipiac University, they sent out a poll, and I want to find how many people it was that they surveyed here. 1,326 U.S. adults nationwide, and we're talking about a margin error of less than 3 percentage points, so plus or minus 2.7 here. And just to come up to the bullet points to round through it, here's the ratings essentially. In the questions, I mean, we could go and read the questions, but this is just a quick summary of it.
Yeah, let's do a quick summary.
As far as when people were asked about the President Biden's administration response to coronavirus, 48% approve while 50% disapprove. So we have majority disapproval there.
It's a pretty narrow, though. Still pretty narrow.
It's pretty narrow, but it's tipped, and that changed, I believe, from 3 weeks ago. All of these numbers were on majority positive.
Okay, so this is a drop then from what the approval was.
Yes, and this is a massive drop for April. So we've had a couple things since the last poll, which is going to be Afghanistan is a big one. A lot of people were pretty pissed about that one, and now we have all these different COVID vaccination mandates, which I'll come back to a little bit later, but it's overwhelmingly getting a lot of disapproval that was not expected. And
I'm looking at a statistic right here about his job as commander-in-chief. What's the look on that?
As commander-in-chief, it was 37% approve and 58% disapprove.
Ooh.
The economy, some people are waking up to it, where 39% approve, 55% disapprove. Taxes, 37% approve, 37% approve, 54% disapprove. Foreign policy, 34% approve, while 58% disapprove. Afghanistan, again. Immigration issues, only 25% approve, while 67% disapprove.
Yeah,
that is massive.
That's probably the most disheartening one. And then I see another stat about the Mexican border.
Yeah, specifically the Mexican border. So immigration is one topic, but then the Mexican border is.
I feel like they're almost like I'm looking at the two stats. And they both have 67% disapproval rating.
Yeah, 23% approval rating. So that means there's 2% more that are unsure in that group. And then Biden's personal traits. These are some of my favorites, actually. They were asked about if Biden cares about average Americans. 49% said yes, while 48% said no.
Okay.
So and that was compared, but then in April, that's compared to a 58% yes, 37% no.
Okay.
So that has gone up a nice 13 points for Biden not caring. So there's an extra 13% of people out there who don't feel like Biden cares about them. And then, is Biden honest? 44% say yes, while 50% say no, comparing to a 51-42 percentage back in April. And then, has good leadership skills? Only 41% say yes, while majority 56% say no, compared to 52% yes, 44% no back in April.
Yeah, this is not good.
Overall, more than half of Americans say 55%. Say 55% that Biden administration is not competent in running the government.
Yeah, I think the key word there is competency.
Yep, competency is at its overall low. And there's another little poll that I had to go grab from Newsweek because I found this one interesting. And I'm trying to find which poll this was. This was a Harvard Caps Harris poll, and it basically asked, who's a better president?
Donald Trump or
Donald Trump is actually winning in this one. Not by much, but
what are the numbers there for that? Do you have
let's
them?
find this. Let's see.
There's a lot of text there. I know it's probably hard to find.
51%. So since then, let's see. This one I might have had a different article here.
Failing, Connor.
Yes, I got way too many tabs open here. Here we go. From the Hill. I'm gonna get that up. Sorry about the video, everybody. Can't stop all of the ads. But 48% of respondents say they have a positive view of Trump, compared to 46% who say they have a favorable opinion of his successor. Biden's favorability is slightly underwater. However, 49% of those surveyed said they have an unfavorable view of the current president, while slightly less, 47%, report an unfavorable opinion of Trump. So he's winning by 2% at this point.
I mean, as Biden continues to get worse, I think that those numbers are probably going to continue dropping. That's my prediction. I don't think it's a bad prediction. I think it's a pretty common sense one, unless
I think it's a pretty safe bet at this point.
Because if Biden keeps going down this train, remember that Biden ran as a moderate. He's like, I'm gonna be normal. I eat ice cream, right? I have veneers. I'm just a normal average guy. And he ends up being pretty leftist in regards to how he's doing policy, if he's doing policy at all. I just feel like with the border, at least, he just got rid of all the policies. What are the policies? It just almost looks like a free reign. You just kind of come in.
It is also, he tends to be skipping around the actual lawmaking and just issuing these mandates. And then when they get struck down, then he just goes and issues another one. And it just keeps going.
Right, and that's very bothersome, and I don't understand what's going on there. But yeah, it looks like the poll numbers are pretty bad. We shouldn't be surprised though. We should have seen this coming.
And there's a immigration train of 60,000 plus people headed our way from Mexico.
Well, that's great.
And I'm forgetting the origin of it. I want to say it's probably a mixture of multiple countries.
I read about this a little bit ago, and I
what? That's worth finding out for this podcast.
I don't think it's Mexico though. It's a different country, and I can't remember.
Let's see here. All right, from Fox News.
I'm seeing Panama.
Nope, I don't want a video. Thanks.
I saw Panama. Go back. No, see there, Fox News, that video.
No, I don't want to pull a video up though.
Right, but I'm saying that the headline.
Oh, they're saying it from Panama, really?
Panama officials.
American military news: 60,000 more Haitian migrants heading to U.S. border.
Okay.
Now they did just get wrecked by hurricane this summer.
That is yes.
So Panama government warns 60,000 migrants headed to the U.S.
See, this is why you're here, Connor, to not let me take the headline as the to draw my own conclusion regarding
and running through this. Okay, so using Bing, you don't really. These are all we've got I mean, there is Newsmax. I know a lot of people are like, they're not real. Well, no, they're reporting, so they are. But I'm going to run over to DuckDuckGo and throw this in because a little bit less biased than Google and Bing. Get pretty similar searches between those two, but I am curious what we can get in here. All right, 60,000 migrants.
I thought you copied and pasted it.
Apparently I missed it. This is not my normal keyboard, so I am definitely off my typing game.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's yeah, but it's much quieter. So, okay, here we go. DuckDuckGo, thank you. Border Patrol has released more than 60,000 migrants. Oh, has it already happened?
Are we
okay,
behind?
now that's releasing 60,000 migrants into the U.S. under Biden, and that was back in... I'm going to keep getting all these video clips.
Yes, you are.
Which I actually believe those will make it into the recording, but...
That's okay.
I'm fine with it. Eventually, we will have all of this showing up on the screen so we can show people videos and talk about it real time. But
I didn't know we were making this plan, but yay. This is news to me too.
I'm making that plan because it's good content for YouTube.
Oh.
But yeah, looks like surge. Yeah, Daily Caller reports a surge of 60,000 migrants could overwhelm the border. And this was as of October 5th. So that's 4 days ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, from the Daily Caller, around 60,000 Haitian migrants could overwhelm the border. Officials in Texas state leadership said. Washington Examiner actually reported that on Tuesday. But yeah, they're attempting to enter illegally.
Right.
And I can't imagine what a crowd of 60,000 people looks like.
Yeah,
I've seen crowds of a few thousand, maybe 10,000, but 60,000.
Yeah, that's insane. It's a lot, and illegal immigration. I used to not know a ton about it. I really didn't have like a deep opinion. But as we've kept going on with this, and I understand some people's hearts were like, you know, that there was an earthquake, or what was it, a hurricane or an earthquake?
Hurricane.
Yeah.
The earthquake happened years ago.
That's right.
But
That's
they had an earthquake. They had an earthquake that broke all their buildings, so they set up tent cities. And then they had a hurricane that came in, ripped all the tents away. So they had nothing.
Yeah, that's crazy.
They had nothing. They got a little something, and then they had nothing again.
Yeah.
And once again, they've been blasted with another hurricane.
Yeah, and their government's pretty corrupt as well.
Yeah. Now, I would have to go back and look and see what I guess it's essentially like the global rules for seeking asylum, but I believe it's usually the bordering country that is safe and will accept you is the one that you take. Now, bordering could be a little bit subjective where, let's say you were in Nigeria and you happen to grab a plane to America. That is considered the next border. But otherwise, if you're hoofing it on foot, whatever surrounding country that is safe and was willing to accept and take care of you is the next one. In this case, it would probably be Panama since that's where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Even if they got to Mexico, though, Mexico is willing to take asylum seekers, but they just press through and end up in America.
Right, and they know that Biden's not really enforcing anything at the moment, and so it might be better for them to come here. The issue is that...
They can go to Canada. Canada would love it.
Oh my gosh.
We just build a highway right from Mexico border straight through Texas all the way up to Canada.
That sounds like a lot of work.
Or California. A little bit shorter.
California. Oh, California. Yes, there's a lot going on there, but yeah, the thing with this is the common sense thing to me is that we can't take in every single person who wants to immigrate here. So we have a legal immigration system, and then obviously we have illegal immigration. America cannot house more and more people. Eventually America's society will break apart, because if you think about it too,
we don't have the infrastructure for it.
You don't have the infrastructure, but I mean,
especially coming in waves like this.
Yeah. And of course we assume that all of this is in good trust and faith. I was actually looking at a video, I'm trying to remember his name, but it's called the Nazarene Project, which they did some work in Afghanistan when they're trying to get all of the people out of Kabul. That was a rough operation. But he also does Underground Railroad, which has to do with human trafficking. And he talked about how that border situation is pretty much a breeding ground for human trafficking.
Yes.
And they'll just be like, they'll take a child, be like, hey, give him to a trafficker, and like just pretend that's your son.
They're not
your
as
daughter.
easy to get detained and stopped and taken back.
Right.
That being said, we're not unsympathetic to what's going on for them. And it's like, I want us to help more. I definitely don't think America will say invading their country and taking over and helping them become a free capitalistic country is the right answer, because that hasn't worked. Ever.
And there's a deep debate there regarding where America's influence goes, and you can even have that argument with like how long we were supposed to stay in Afghanistan, right? Because I think while you and I and most Americans agree that the way that Biden withdrew out of Afghanistan was a complete disgrace and an utter disaster that should, again, as I said last podcast, never be forgotten.
Yep, and it was almost on Trump's hands for doing that. Maybe it could have been executed better.
You're opening a can of worms right now.
It's a can of worms, but yeah. I'm not going to let Trump off the hook, because I thought it was a stupid idea when I heard about it, and I was just like, well, maybe, but I don't know about this one. That seems like it's a big risk to take for a lot of people.
And again, we're opening a can of worms that I don't think we want to open tonight. But yes, I do agree about Trump and his deal and all that good stuff. And
I'm only noting it because he started it, Biden finished it.
Well, to
arguably
be fair,
screwed
George,
it up.
Honestly, this started way back with George W. Bush. Like, so. There's, again, this is a whole can of worms.
Right.
What I was going to say is that you and I agree that it was a disastrous way to draw out, but you and I might have differing opinions regarding whether or not we should have stayed in Afghanistan or not as a whole. But we should get back to immigration.
And I've got a decent segue for immigration actually as well.
Great.
Speaking of 60,000 people pouring in, largely they're going to be unvaccinated. The U.S. government is not requiring vaccinations for them, and they're just plowing in. Meanwhile, American citizens are being told you need to have a passport in order to with a vaccine card showing you're fully inoculated or not, you're fully vaccinated, so that you can work, or so that you can enter this restaurant, or come to this music festival, or come to this sporting event. New York City looking at you. Los Angeles looks like they're probably doing some similar things. It's coming. It's starting to look a little bit. Would you say despotic? Maybe. A little bit there. We went from 15 days to slow the spread to where's your papers where you don't work, and we've got healthcare workers that are on strikes. And it's looking like I want to say America's probably around between 70 and 75% vaccinated at this point.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty high percentage.
There's a pretty high percentage of people that are holding out on it. I want to bring this up real quick, and this news came back out in August, and I never heard about it, and I just happened to stumble across it. AP News reported that Montana was the only one that banned vaccine requirements for employees. Now, this went for government and private. So if you're a business or a corporation within Montana, as far as my understanding goes, you can't require vaccination for your employees.
And obviously state employees are not required to have vaccination.
So that has been more common. I did find a website here if people want to check it out. It is NASHP, National Academy for State Health Policy. They have an entire page devoted to state efforts to ban or enforce COVID-19 vaccine mandates and passports. As you can see on this grid, mandates are banned in Montana.
So that's the only state?
That's the only state. Now, that's for everybody.
Okay.
So private employer mandates, Montana's the only one. State worker mandates, you got a bigger list. There's a lot more in there. Then you have health worker mandates, you have school and faculty mandates.
So I'm seeing that there are some... So if the states are... Oh, hang on. I see now. Okay. Vaccines are
Let me make this page a little bigger.
So vaccines are banned.
Mandates are banned.
For state workers in Montana. I see Utah, Texas, Arkansas, Tennessee, Georgia, Indiana, and Michigan.
Yep. Vaccines are mandated for state workers in Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Virginia, North Carolina. I don't know what the little one over there is.
I don't Oh, it's just a little guy. He's just swimming around.
It is.
Oh, it's DC.
DC. They get their own thing. Okay.
That makes sense.
New York,
okay.
Massachusetts, and New Jersey, and probably some of the other smaller states that I can't really see in that cluster there.
Okay.
But
yeah,
the site's listing what's going on here between private employer mandates. We've got state worker mandates, health worker mandates. Yellow is okay. Health organizations are exempt from bans on mandates. That's interesting. Then you have school faculty mandates and vaccine passports.
Out of curiosity, what states are requiring a vaccine passport?
Vaccine passports. So most of them have banned it. You are looking at California and New York for
and those are the two that I've been seeing in the news that are doing the vaccine.
Especially New York.
Passports.
Although they recently came out with a report, and I think Timcast, to give that channel a shout out, covered it, that New York has only issued 10 basically citations for people not following that when it comes to restaurants or something. And I was actually up there recently and just checking with restaurants to be sure, like, dude, do I need to come in with a vaccine passport? Can I come if I don't have one? Like, how does this working with stores here? And so I had a gentleman on the phone explain to me, he's like, essentially, like, if you want to come in and eat, then you need to be fully vaccinated. Show us your passport. You can come in, sit down at the table, order food.
Are you serious?
Yep. That's the way it works. He's like, and then he explained nicely. He's like, and if you don't, he's like, you can still come in. You can order food. You just need to let somebody know that you're going to take it to go. And basically, you're just not going to hang around the restaurant. However, this doesn't apply, and you can go over the list of bans in New York City. This does not apply to traveling musicians who are coming into the city. They don't need to have vaccination proof.
Are you serious?
Yep.
So they're just...
Same for athletes.
Yeah. So, okay. So normal people have to follow these rules.
Yes,
just
normal
not people who are up there and stardom. Okay.
That would be correct.
That sounds about
this
right.
website's great.
Okay.
They are ongoing tracking. So this was updated as of October 1st. So just a couple of days ago, about a week ago. So they're keeping a pretty good lookout on what the states are doing here. Alaska definitely banned it. Oh, actually, I missed that.
Yeah.
Hawaii, you need a vaccine passport.
Yeah, there's a lot of restrictions in Hawaii.
Yeah, I'm not surprised there at all. That being said, as far as the vaccinations go, as far as the states are concerned, Project Veritas had a really interesting leak that they exposed this week. Now, I was a little bit bothered because a lot of people freaked out about the content, and if I'm to summarize it, it's that they used aborted fetal cells in the testing process for the mRNA vaccine, so Moderna and Pfizer. When it comes to the Johnson & Johnson, I think that they were used, and I don't want to misspeak here, and maybe I can find it on one of these pages I have pulled up, but the Johnson & Johnson one also tested, but they might have used it in one other stage. Now, I want to clarify something. There is not, as far as it's been known, there is not fetal cell tissue in the vaccinations that are being injected.
Because that's what
into.
I was wondering.
And that's what a lot of people assumed when that came out. So these fetal cells were used, at least one of them is confirmed to be from an abortion. The other one's either an abortion or a miscarriage. But we're looking at fetal cell line HEK293, which was a kidney cell line that was isolated from a fetus back in 1973. That's the one that kind of has an undisclosed origin, but they're thinking spontaneous miscarriage or elective abortion. And then the second one is PER.C6, a retinal cell line that was isolated from an aborted fetus in 1985. Now, I want to stress that these have been used in other vaccines and medication before, because they'll use those cells in the testing process to find out if the vaccine is essentially going to be viable, if it's going to work properly. And I've got another website that I can read on that has more on that. But that is essentially what it is. Now you go through this. This is from the North Dakota Health. Let me see. Yeah, health.nd. So it's North Dakota government site. We also have one from Nebraska Medicine, and they detail a little bit more about it. Now, something that all of these articles do in common is they basically will bring up some sort of religious authority of some sort, normally within the Christian realm. And there's like, well, the Pope and the Vatican said this is an okay reason for you to get vaccinated. As if these leaders can come in and just tell people what their moral conscience is going to be.
Well, here's what's so back to a little bit what you're saying. So Project Veritas, though, so it seems like this information is out there and open. So
this is out
what
there.
happened with Project Veritas?
What ended up happening with Project Veritas is not the release that this information was out there, because it was. I knew about it before Project Veritas came out because I wanted to know what's going on with the vaccine. I've heard these things before. Let's go look into it. And what Project Veritas came out with, and I don't believe I have the lady's name, but I'm going to look for it. Pfizer whistleblower. Let me see if I can get a hold of her name. I don't have a tab pulled up with her name right now. Well, regardless, you can find the video on Project Veritas's YouTube page or on their actual website. But she essentially details that Pfizer executives knew that this might be a problem for people.
Right.
And so internal memos and emails that were leaked tell specifically to keep it hush-hush. We don't want this getting out there because it's going to be it's not going to be advantageous for us to distribute this vaccine.
Yeah, and her name is Melissa. I don't know her last name, but her name is Melissa.
Thank you for finding that. I bet I can pull up, because I went through the video multiple times just trying to listen to it. I'm trying to remember who had the best article breakdown with citations from it. Probably best that you go and listen to it yourself, but let's see if I can find Project Veritas leak. I cannot get used to these keyboards.
I know, I can tell you're struggling. Melissa Strickler.
Melissa Strickler, that is correct. We'll just go straight to the source. We'll go to Project Veritas. And we'll read through some of the bullet points here, but let's see. From Vanessa Gelman, Pfizer Senior Director of Worldwide Research. From the perspective of corporate affairs, we want to avoid having the information on fetal cells floating out there. The risk of communicating this right now outweighs any potential benefit we could see, particularly with general members of the public who may take this information and use it in ways we may not want out there. We have not received any questions from policymakers or media on this issue in the last few weeks, so we want to avoid raising this if possible. Also, we have been trying as much as possible to mention the fetal cell lines.
To not mention them.
To not mention. They don't want to mention it. They don't want this known. One or more fetal cell lines with an origin that can be traced back to human fetal tissue has been used in laboratory tests associated with the vaccine program. And we have somebody else here, Philip Dormitzer, Pfizer Chief Scientific Officer, stating that HEK293 T cells used for the IVE assay are ultimately derived from an aborted fetus. On the other hand, the Vatican Doctrinal Committee has confirmed that they consider it acceptable for pro-life believers to be immunized. Vatican. Pfizer's official statement couches the answer well and is what should be provided in response to an outside inquiry.
Yeah, this is.
And essentially, you're going through the emails, and they're just like, we don't want this getting out there. We don't want to talk about it. Now, the thing is, this information was out there. It just wasn't mainstream. It wasn't widely known. Or you keep getting the misnomer, even that you were under the assumption that there was going to be DNA in the actual vaccine. So I want to be really clear on this. It's not in the vaccine. It is used in the testing process. You can find this information out there. You just kind of have to know what you're looking for. I've mentioned the cell lines already. You can find some more of that. And here's some of the clips from the emails that they grabbed. And these were pretty interesting to read through. I mean, essentially just freaking out for a PR disaster.
That was exactly the words. Like when you read the first email, scroll back up.
Mm-hmm.
Scroll back all the way to the top. Great. From Vanessa Gelman. That seems like a kind of email that we would send about PR, where it's like, hey, we want to keep this on the down low. Like we say that about information sometimes. We're like, oh, we don't know if we 100% want this out there. So to a certain extent, you can even hear her, or I guess read her logically trying to be like, we don't want this out here. We're weighing the pros and cons because we really want people to be vaccinated. Right?
Pretty much is what it is. They don't want to give people any more reason to take an issue with the vaccine or to be concerned about it. And mainly so it can just be more widely distributed. It's what they're looking at. Now, I was hoping they had a clip of it in here because essentially she goes through this explanation because somebody inquired with her, Advait Bakar, basically posed the question, did Pfizer make use of a cell line from an aborted fetus when carrying out any confirmatory tests for this vaccine? And he notes that this is after we had already confirmed with the customer that no cell lines from an aborted fetus were used in manufacturing process.
Who did they confirm with?
Apparently a customer came in and inquired of it. I don't know who the customer is, but somebody has made an inquiry to Pfizer, were fetal cell lines used in this? And they said no. And then they go internally and they go, hey, was this used? Like, please note that we've already said that there's not. And then Vanessa Gelman comes in and is like, no, it has been used, but we're trying to keep it. We're trying to, what did she say? We have been trying as much as possible to not mention the fetal cell lines. We just want to stay focused on the first part if possible. So they are actively trying to avoid this information getting out there. Of course, Project Veritas has blown it up.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Mm-hmm.
So have their people been lying about it, or have they been not mentioning it?
It sounds like they're not mentioning it. Based on these messages that have been released here, is that they're either not mentioned or they didn't know. And so
out of ignorance, they're
ignorance,
saying
and not
no.
like if that message is all that we have, and the response is really great, because after this one, if you go watch the video, you will see that somebody else responds to her and asks a clarifying question. They're like, okay, so you're saying that we should let them know this, and she comes back in like all capital letters, like, do not tell them.
So that's pretty aggressive. It's very aggressive.
It's really aggressive. And I bet if I can pull up the YouTube video here, I bet you that I can find just a clip of that, because they had it in there for basically, I don't know why they didn't have it. That was one of the funniest parts, because somebody was just like, hey, like, are you sure? Like, I just want to clarify.
And she's all like,
no,
do
not bring this up. I wish this would clear up a little bit here. I'm just going to mute that so I can kind of scroll through a few things here.
Yeah. Because I'm just kind of curious about, because there's a difference between kind of keeping some information on the down low and then like completely lying about it. And where's the line there?
Yep. Let's see.
And
here.
that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Pfizer original statement. Okay, so that's the one that we were just looking at on the webpage. It should be one of these next clips in here for the video. And just hats off, honestly, to Project Veritas for doing what I would consider to be actual reporting at this point. I know a lot of people really question their motives and stuff. And it's like, look, they're taking in video and they're recording people, in inside of places, saying things, doing things.
Yeah.
This one's are straight up whistleblowers that came out with inside content. But a lot of people have taken issue with the way there it is. They're taking issue with the way that they do the reporting, though. To be honest, it is one of the more honest and accurate reportings that's out there, because it is from people inside of organizations that are filming these things, of actual conversations taking place. There's no time for somebody to be interviewed and censor themselves or be careful about what they're saying.
And these are typically pretty short clips. Daily Wire, they did a interview with Project Veritas's owner or founder, and he kind of did a reaction video where he reacts to the different projects that they've done, and kind of explains like that they're really short clips, and there's no way for them to really doctor them. Like, you look at the clip, they're like, that's what it is. It's a 10-second clip that goes against what they said on air, and there's no way for them to take it back or even try to twist it around. And typically they just end up getting really mad at Project Veritas for doing that. So I don't know as much about Project Veritas. I see them around here and there, and I look at some of their stuff. But you're probably more familiar with them. But go ahead and play that clip.
Yeah, we can play through this part. That would actually be interesting audio to have.
This is the principal scientist in Massachusetts, and what happens here?
She's just making sure, just be clear, you would like medical information to reply with the text in red below, including the highlighted section.
Okay.
Thanks again. And then they responded with,
no, I would prefer that we do not use the text in yellow.
No, don't be that honest, just a little honest.
And now to clarify, that text in yellow they're talking about is that one or more cell lines with an origin that can be traced back to human fetal tissue has been used in laboratory tests associated with the vaccine program. So somebody asked a clarifying question in the emails, and they're like, okay, so we want this information to be known, and that was her response, which was in bold and underlined, no, we don't want that out there. So, and on top of that, what is her name? I'm going to keep forgetting the whistleblower's name here. But
Melissa Strickler.
She had video of inside Pfizer where she was telling that they're normally trained like you will be seen at all times. You need to be seen at all times. It's for security. It's just for the openness of what they do there to make sure that there's nothing nefarious going on. Well, she sends video and you can look through it. I wonder if I can find it in here. Obviously, nobody in the audience can see it because we are podcasting. But just for you to take a look at, you can see her walking through the clinics here, or the Pfizer building essentially, and they have started to black out some of the windows for these doors, so you can't see what's going on in there. Now that being said, I'll be just to play devil's advocate here. It is possible that those windows have some sort of a tint on them when the lights are off inside. You just can't see anything. Because as you can see up here in the beginning, that room is well lit. You can see right through the windows. But the rest of these doors that we're getting to, now maybe they're applying some sort of tint that now you can no longer see, but you can't see into those. And so
that's a pretty deep tint. I'm gonna be honest. That's a deep tint.
It's a deep tint. Again, the lights could be off. It's kind of a weird way that would work. I'd love to see if anybody else comes out with some more stuff.
Yeah, I think that could potentially be open to some interpretation. I think that I'd like to wait a little bit longer before I jump to a conclusion. But
I'm not going to jump to a conclusion that Pfizer is being nefarious and with malintent hiding some evil thing that they're doing to the vaccine. But they, at the very least, according to those emails that we just listened to and read, they definitely didn't want that information out in the open.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how people are going to feel about it. And people don't have to be Christians. They could just have a moral objection to using tissue from aborted babies. And I think that's up to the individual person to decide, and the government shouldn't be able to come in and just say, well, you're going to get it anyways.
Yeah. And I think that I don't know how big this story would have been if we haven't had so much mistrust with public health communication. I really think that people already feel very hesitant about any sort of public health messaging that's come out. It's just been really, really bad. Communication scholars will study this for forever, I imagine. So the fact that there's even like some kind of doubt that they're hiding anything could just make more people not want the vaccine. I feel like with everything they try to cover up, whether they think it's good or bad, like they keep kind of digging themselves into a deeper hole. Whoever they is, whether it's Pfizer or the government, it's just making everything.
It's making people. It's making them more resistant. It's like, hey,
it is.
Here's this thing we didn't tell you about. We're keeping it on the down low.
I just want honesty. I just want some upfrontness.
Some honesty and some consistency would be nice.
Yeah, I think that's
and if they were wrong about something, or they found out new information, then it's like, okay, we thought that one mask was good enough, but here's these tests, and you should wear 3 masks.
Oh, I'm not doing that. Oh my gosh, it's hard to breathe in the one mask, so I think 3 would be hard for me.
That's my point though. Is like all these different things that just keep changing. It used to be we needed to get the population for herd immunity to 70%.
The goalpost keeps changing.
Yes, now it's at least 90%. It might be higher than that at this point. They might be shooting for 95. So I'm like, but they don't just say, "Yeah, I was wrong. Like we screwed up." Take this spring for example. April, May. I think April. Fauci's saying you might need to double up on masks, extra social distancing, more lockdowns. May, if you've been vaccinated, you can go out. no more social distancing, within reason, at least outside, and you don't have to wear masks anymore. And then what happened like June? If you've been vaccinated, put your mask back on and go back to social distancing.
And I can play devil's advocate. I'll play devil's advocate and be like, well, the science keeps changing. Like, everything keeps moving around. We just don't know. That would be an argument that I would hear from someone with a different point of view. What would you think about that?
Every time I've heard it, I've responded with, if this is really as dangerous and deadly as it is, then why are you playing around with stuff so much?
What do you mean by that?
They're not, if they're not sure beyond a shadow of a doubt that they've gotten past whatever hill they're trying to conquer, then they shouldn't go laxing on things. But they do, and then they take it back. And then they make it lax for some people, and then now not others. And now we know that being vaccinated, you can still get sick with it. So it means you can still spread it. And it's the same for asymptomatics. You can still spread it. As far as I've been able to find out, that is the case. And they're still mostly concerned with people that are unvaccinated as if they are the danger.
Yeah. I think what you're hitting at too is kind of like, what's the motive for the flip-flopping, back and forth, where some restrictions, we like the Met Gala, like everyone gets to have their mask off.
Obama's birthday party.
Yeah, and then
all the
else,
servants there were masked. Well, the servants,
yeah.
the wait staff,
well,
the maids,
they were
the
serving.
butlers. Yeah, they were serving, and
yeah.
they were all there. They're all masked up, and everybody else, no masks.
Right.
Not social distancing, even though everybody else in America is being told to do that.
Yeah. So the question is, why do they get special privileges and everyone else doesn't? And the question also too is, here's the thing: they need to define an end goal. And I think the reason why they don't want to give an end goal is because they can't keep power if they keep doing that, right? Like, if our goal is to get hospitalizations down, then we should actually be fairly satisfied with where we're at as a country. Those who are vaccinated, while they can get the virus, we do know that they can have a breakthrough infection. They typically don't go to the hospital. So, is a mild cold worth masking everybody up again? And for the people who are unvaccinated, most of them have made that individual and personal choice, and they're not really that deeply concerned from the information that I've gotten and who I've talked to. So the question is, why are we so concerned about that as well? These are just questions that I'm asking, and we should ask everyone in the audience, because I know there's a lot of different views on this, there's a lot of different opinions, but asking yourselves questions about, so why does Obama not have to wear masks? Why do I have to wear them? Why can we have football games but all the kids are wearing masks? People, the age group that doesn't transmit COVID quite as potently as adults do, why do they have to wear masks and sit in their little chairs far away from each other when we can have, football games and events and celebrities can do what they want? Like, why is there a difference here?
Yep. And they're all answers that we would all like to hear.
Yeah, I'd like some good answers. And I'd like some answers. Well, I was about to say I'd like some answers from Fauci, but I
don't want any more answers from Fauci. I'm done with him.
Yeah, I can't even. I don't feel like it matters if you're a Democrat or Republican. Like, he's so inconsistent at this point where I don't know why you keep listening to him. But yeah, these are, again, maybe we leave this as an open-ended thing, just asking yourself some questions and opening yourself up to some different ideas. Even I did that today, I guess, with Connor in regards to the military situation. So that'll be something worth discussing and worth thinking about. I'll have to actually think about that a bit more and do a little bit more reading on it. But it's not being open, but still being firm in your foundation. I think is a good thing. You don't want to be so open to where you believe in relativism, and then suddenly everything's right. But if everything's right, then nothing can be right. It's a big problem.
Always reminds me of and I don't remember who originally coined the phrase, but if you don't stand for something, then you fall for anything, and that has been resoundingly true for a lot of people. I think when you're not grounded in something, you kind of will just accept whatever comes along, whatever the government might tell you, whatever the medical professionals might tell you. And I wish there wasn't such a distrust with the medical system, but as of right now, like with them being, I would say, in bed with the government and trying to push and force these things, it's making a lot of people pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I feel like CDC was trusted. I started off trusting the CDC in the very beginning. Now I don't trust them at all. Like, they have lost so much trust in the public, and the public is just not going to listen anymore. I think a lot of people are just done. I felt like if they had been honest in the beginning, we might have had a better situation with people listening. Now, that doesn't mean, I do think in the beginning that with some of the stuff they chose to do, I could understand it because not much was known about COVID. So I can understand that, and I get that. But at this point, I think we need to start making some end goal decisions and sticking with them. Of course, the establishment's not going to do that because they want to maintain control. And I know that's a big debate for a lot of people as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we can get to it today. But if you're a believer, why wouldn't you wear the mask? Why wouldn't you get vaccinated?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big can of worms. And I think it's an interesting question. And I think there's never, what I've noticed people do is that people tend to oversimplify things. I feel like that's what's happened with social media, is that we get, like, we've said this before, like that zinger phrase or that zinger quote. You're like, oh yeah, that's good. And then you repost it.
The zingers, the political memes, this is my meme to make a point. It's lacking
a random
so
mom's
much
blog post. Yeah.
Like so much context is just non-existent there.
Right. And sometimes you have to do your own searching and do your own reading in some of the things that we're doing. And we're excited. We're going to be doing a book club series. We're going to go through some older books. I'm going through one right now. I won't reveal which one it is, but we are going to talk about that. And we have another one that we're going through together to understand a little bit more of our foundation as a country. And I think that's a lot of things that people have forgotten. So we're going to be doing that. And then we're also going to talk about specific topics. Maybe we have a military debate. Maybe that would be fun. Maybe we
it'd be fun to get other people's
other
opinions on it as well. And before I get to the last little segment here,
do we have time for the last segment? It's a little. We've been going for a little bit.
I can get through this one pretty quick. I don't need to go through all of the quotes. People can go watch the 60-minute interview themselves. But there was a couple of things I wanted to pick out here. So there was not just a whistleblower for Pfizer. There was also a whistleblower for Facebook. And I say whistleblower with intense quotation marks because I 100%.
Your voice is so like I just knocked the thing there. Your voice is so steady that I couldn't hear the what was it you said, the emphasis on the word whistleblower.
Yeah. I don't think she's a whistleblower. And this is entirely my opinion piece on this, but I've definitely heard from a few other people who I'm like, oh, did you see about this? Nobody thinks she's an actual whistleblower because what she's bringing to the surface, supposedly, is that Facebook knows from internal studies that the way that social media works, especially Instagram, is particularly harmful to people. And they quote a few studies of internal, like, Facebook and Instagram studies.
Wait. You mean that social media
is a bad thing?
Whoa. I didn't know. I didn't know. And are you saying it could be harmful to women's self-esteem and body image?
Absolutely not. It should be increasing it, make them feel better about themselves.
Whoa. This is whistleblow information right here. I would never have known if she hadn't come out and said something.
Yeah, no, nobody would have guessed that. And
sorry, that was sarcasm. I've been told that I'm deadpan. Am I deadpan?
A little bit.
Oh.
A little bit on the sarcasm.
I got to work on that because some people can't tell. Okay, I'm going to work on that.
All right. Well, the whistleblower is Frances Haugen. I'm going to go with Haugen.
Yeah.
And 60 Minutes did an interview with her, and it was one of the more abysmal interviews I think I've ever seen, just to critique him on that a little bit. Not interesting at all. She's 100% seemed rehearsed. And to go off of that, essentially she comes in saying that there's conflicts of interest between what was good for the public and what was good for Facebook. And Facebook over and over again chose to optimize for its own interests, like making more money. And essentially what she goes on here is that Facebook knows that if their algorithms change what people see to be something that they know that they might react poorly to, or that elicits an emotional response, anger is a pretty good one, then they get a lot more interaction on those posts. And the more interactions they get, the more ads get seen, the more ads gets clicked, the more revenue Facebook gets. So that's essentially what she's coming out here before, which a lot of people, especially millennials, I think are pretty aware of that Facebook and Instagram do if they're paying attention at all, is Facebook does skew things that way. They will alter your news feed so that you will feel a particular way. They can. They have the ability.
They literally did a Netflix documentary.
It is a great Netflix documentary.
It is
as well.
I don't remember what it's called. Is it called The Social Dilemma?
I believe so.
Okay.
Let's verify that. Yep, Social Dilemma's coming up. Yep, The Social Dilemma.
Social Dilemma. Yeah. So this is all stuff that I've heard from that documentary. So this is with Whistleblow, like it's got to be something that's just not known and just
I mean, this is
Yeah.
confirming from internal that this does seem to be the case. Of course, Mark Zuckerberg has denied that this is what the company does, and that it would be deeply, I think he said, illogical, essentially, for Facebook to do that. I'm like, no, actually, if profits are your goal, that would be the logical thing to do.
Well, that's
you put
what I
out the
was
most
thinking.
clickbaity items that you can. You get people infuriated with each other, and you make sure that those people see it, and then you get more engagement, and you get more people spending more time on your product.
Yeah. But what she's also said here is that she says the company is lying about, and I quote, making significant progress against hate, violence, and misinformation. And whenever you hear the words hate, violence, and misinformation, those terms, again, have been really misconstrued. And I find that the left tends to expand them, if that makes sense.
Water them down, expand them. Yeah. So what she's referring to here, and these are some of the strings that I told you I was pulling on earlier, and I just couldn't stop myself. She was contacted back in 2008 by 2018 by Facebook. She's worked for other tech giants like Google and I think Pinterest, and Facebook contacted her about a position that they were forming a civic integrity unit. Now this is 2018. She joined in 2019. I think a few hundred other employees, and what it was essentially there to do was to combat misinformation, and that was specifically what she wanted to come in for because, and I quote from her, she lost a friend to online conspiracy theories. So she comes into this wanting to fight misinformation. They get this group formed up just before the 2020 election. This is the group that primarily was censoring information on Facebook. And this group was, according to her, dissolved shortly after Joe Biden took office.
Interesting.
So they came to being, and according to Facebook, they just dissolved it into other groups. Like they're like, oh, we don't really need this. And like one group, we can kind of piece you guys out into different departments. Now, what's funny about that is this means that she would be part, and this is something I want to hit on, is the idea of misinformation, I think falls in right along with hate speech for me, that there's not a definition for it. It is, misinformation could probably have more of a definition, a more solid one, but you can't really define it because to a large extent, it's going to be subjective. Now, Twitter and Facebook considered the Hunter Biden laptop scandal with explicit images with him and a young girl, supposedly his niece. This post,
that's really gross.
Yeah, and also plenty of crack cocaine and lots of drugs, and that's Hunter Biden. So they deemed this misinformation, and this was the New York Post that came out with the original. They came out with the original story on it. Mm-hmm. And what's funny is I don't ever remember the New York Post like particularly going after Democrats and liberals. But
I noticed they actually tend to put out some more conservative stuff.
I noticed big time after they were banned on Twitter and Facebook. They had their accounts shut down because they put this story out, which was going to hurt the Biden campaign. They got taken off of Twitter and they got taken off of Facebook. And ever since then, something changed in that organization, and they've been going after this type of stuff since then. So that's been particularly interesting to watch there.
Yeah.
By the way, the FBI did look into the claims about the Hunter Biden laptop. Turns out it's totally legit. It is his
Yeah.
laptop. And this also kind of runs into, and I don't want to try and derail too much here,
Yeah.
but this is essentially the group that would also be out trying to combat things like what they were talking about, the January 6th attack on the Capitol, the attack, which was also another one of those stories that they definitely blew out of proportion. And in the end, the FBI did find out that there was scant evidence that it was organized. And you're talking like maybe 5% of the people, I believe, they found might have had some sort of pre-planning, but didn't have any of their plans beyond getting into the building. Which where you get them walking in between the lines.
And that makes sense because it was kind of chaos inside the Capitol building anyway. So
yeah, it just turns into a mess. She's part of the group that she would want to be trying to basically silence any of that type of communication. Although at this point, there's not really that much communication to have been silenced.
Yeah.
And in the end, the end result of that interview with her in 60 Minutes, just to sum it up, is that she thinks Facebook can't be accountable enough on its own, and it needs government federal intervention. So she's essentially platforming for the government to get their hands more into Facebook's pockets and to have more control over what Facebook does, which we've already seen is pretty atrocious for what they decide can and can't be on the platform, depending on what they consider to be misinformation. So this is where I would say she 100% seems like a planted whistleblower to me.
Yeah, and I think there's some things to really tear apart there that I wish we had more time for, and I think that's something that we could do in a future episode. But I'm sure everyone has, hopefully, I think at least everyone's probably heard of this story at this point.
Of the Capitol riot?
No, the
or
whistleblower,
Facebook,
the
yeah.
Facebook whistleblower. So take a look at it yourself.
Yep, you can find it on YouTube with a 60 Minutes channel.
Yep, I think she also was in a Senate hearing as well.
Yep, that just took place within the last few weeks. I mean,
Right.
apparently she blew this
pretty...
whistle like back in like April at the very earliest that I've seen articles about. And so now the hearings are coming out.
Yeah, and there are plenty of hearings that you can go watch. You can go find them. Forbes breaking news. Some of their titles are kind of clickbaity, but when you read them, you're like, oh, that actually is pretty accurate.
Forbes usually has some pretty decent content. At the least, they at least link to some of their sources, so you can track around through that.
And they typically aren't. Again, you can't really edit that to make it look any other way. That's what the Senate hearing is. But yeah, I think this has been a good segment.
That's been great. We're pushing the 2-hour mark. It's our longest conversation.
I can't get much. I'm gonna be honest. I can't get much longer than 2 hours. I don't know if our audience will be able to or not either. But I'm good.
You
at 2 hours.
would be surprised in the podcast world how long they can get. We just have to be. The content just has to be there, and we got to be engaging enough.
Are we engaging enough?
I think we are. I've gotten some good feedback on that. If anybody else wants to give feedback, or if you have stories that you want us to investigate, or maybe we even said something wrong and you'd like to correct us, right now there is a place. We're working on a website, but for right now, anchor.fm/resident skeptics. You can find our RSS feed there on that page. There's also a place where you can click message and you can send us a direct message.
Send us a couple hate comments.
Some praise comments. All of it helps the analytics.
Oh my gosh.
It's all good for us there. We are available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts now at this point. So you can follow us on any of those. I believe Spotify usually gets the release first. I think I'm going to be releasing trying to get this released on Monday.
I think we're thinking Monday
instead of Tuesday. But releases will come mostly on Tuesdays, depending on our schedule, until we can get a little bit more of a firm grasp of production days and time. But
we do work full time. I'm working a job and a half right now, so it's a miracle. It's a miracle that I'm here, and I'm happy to be. And we are creating a social media account soon. So when we do that, we'll make sure to let you know. So you can follow us, look at our memes, look at some of our little podcast clips. We're trying to make sure we get those out so that you guys can have snippets of the conversation. If you can't handle 2 hours, that is certainly understandable. But that's all I got, Connor.
Yeah, no, that's it for me. I really enjoyed this one, and
Me too.
I definitely am looking forward to continuing this project with you.
Yeah, I think this was a really fun conversation. I always enjoy talking to you, except when I don't, which is never. So this is good.
Well, hopefully all the other beautiful people listening can enjoy the conversations as much as we do.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
See you guys. Well, we never see you guys. We only see each other. So we'll hear from you guys.
See you
later.
never.
Oh, that's so mean. Okay, stop the podcast now. That's enough. They've had enough of you.
All right. We're out.